Qui-Gon Jinn's connection with a young Anakin Skywalker was one of the most unique relationships that Anakin would encounter in his entire life. As Anakin's life progressed, Qui-Gon Jinn was perhaps the closest individual to a father figure that Anakin had up until Darth Sidious took the young Skywalker under his wing as his Sith apprentice. While Qui-Gon was never able to completely salvage the relationship he had with the young Anakin, we know that he was able to communicate with some powerful Jedi following his physical death. Although he was unable to completely manifest himself as a Force ghost for the duration of his death, except on very few circumstances, Qui-Gon Jinn has been shown capable of communication, and the latest episode of Kenobi shows that he actually did learn how to build up a complete physical form, despite what we had previously been led to believe, at least again in small circumstances. But this raises an important question with Vader and Anakin during this time. Did Qui-Gon ever attempt to speak with Anakin or Vader following Qui-Gon's death? How many times did the promising knight turned Sith Lord hear his late master in Qui-Gon? Well, we'll answer those questions today, as we break down and explore in the lore the 2 times that Anakin communicated with Qui-Gon and the single time that Darth Vader heard him. The first known time that Qui-Gon Jinn successfully reached out to Anakin took place while Anakin was attempting to rescue his mother from the Tusken Raiders in Attack of the Clones, with Qui-Gon's Force Ghost attempting to communicate with Qui-Gon being recently confirmed in the canon novel Queen's Hope, written by E.K. Johnston. In the novel, it was confirmed that in the moments leading up to his slaughter of the Sand People, Qui-Gon was successfully able to break into the physical world and admonish Anakin, begging him to listen to his better nature and listen to reason and not kill the Tuskens out of rage. Anakin acknowledges having heard Qui-Gon, but tried to convince himself that he had imagined the voice, this confirming to us that Anakin did actually hear the voice of Qui-Gon Jinn. Though this farce didn't last long, and Anakin ultimately came to realize that there was something larger going on after he heard the voice of Qui-Gon after so many years. Anakin would admit that he had heard Qui-Gon and yet proceeded with the massacre anyway, showing that Qui-Gon continued to watch over Anakin even after his death. It also shows that he still tried to steer Anakin off of the dark path, and he still had faith that Anakin could do the right thing. Though Qui-Gon was unable to stop Anakin from embracing his first steps into the dark side, it showcased that even though the aging master had died before he could properly train Anakin, Qui-Gon still cared a great deal for the young boy, and wanted him to succeed as a true Jedi. The second confirmed time when Qui-Gon was able to reach out to Anakin took place on the Martynas arc during the Clone Wars, when Anakin, alongside Obi-Wan and Ahsoka, were pulled into Martynas, which existed outside of the known plane of existence. Here, they encountered living embodiments of the Force represented by a father and his 2 children, the son and the daughter respectively, who stood for the dark side and the light side. On Martynas, Anakin and Obi-Wan both got to commune with Qui-Gon Jinn's Force Ghost, as this was the first known instance where he is able to manifest a physical body. Qui-Gon is able to do so because Martynas is regarded as an incredibly powerful Force Nexus. A Force Nexus meaning that it's a location that amplifies the abilities of the Force, and therefore amplified Qui-Gon's abilities, finally allowing Qui-Gon to communicate with his respective apprentices. When he encounters Anakin, he asks if he believes himself to be the Chosen One and offers him some guidance on the matter at hand, as Qui-Gon even tells Anakin that he believes that he is in fact the Chosen One. He states that only that he believes Anakin will bring balance to the Force, and most importantly, that Anakin will face his demons in order to save the entire universe. This is of course in reference to his eventual redemption as Darth Vader, showing that Qui-Gon not only acknowledges the internal struggles that Anakin is facing, but believes him to be stronger than whatever might be plaguing his thoughts. After this, Anakin asks for advice from Qui-Gon, seeking Qui-Gon's older wisdom. As he mentioned before, the figure known as the Sun represents the embodiment of the dark side, and Anakin believes it is his duty to kill the Sun for the greater good of the galaxy and his friends. Anakin asks this to Qui-Gon, showing that his mind continually is drifting towards violence, and Qui-Gon attempts to steer him away from these aggressive tendencies, assuring Anakin that there is another way, before dissipating and leaving Anakin alone with his thoughts yet again. This encounter also showcases that Qui-Gon never gave up on Anakin even in the face of Anakin's greatest struggles, and that Qui-Gon had faith that the young boy he had once known is strong enough to defeat whatever took a hold of him later. But while these were encounters that Anakin had with Qui-Gon, did Qui-Gon Jinn ever reach out to Darth Vader after Vader's fall to the darkness? And on one occasion, we know that he did. The encounter in question took place after the destruction of the first Death Star, when Vader was thrown off course due to the explosion. After losing control of his TIE fighter, he crash-landed on the planet known as Vrogus Voss. Here, Vader encountered a camp of rebels, which Vader marched his way through, butchering the resistance before Imperial reinforcements arrived. After slaughtering the rebels, Vader encountered the remains of an ancient Jedi temple which had long since been abandoned and forgotten by time. Vader ventured inside, traversing a system of caverns before hearing both the voices of Qui-Gon as well as Obi-Wan, who he had only just recently killed in combat. What's important to note here is that after the Mortis arc, all three Jedi in question had their memories wiped, and until this point, Vader's only encounter with the ghost of a fallen Jedi had been on Tatooine when he heard the voice of Qui-Gon over 20 years ago, and even then, he was unsure as to how exactly he was able to hear this aged Jedi. This meant that this was Darth Vader's first true encounter with the Jedi that had passed on, both of his respective masters, and this was his first inkling that the Jedi could preserve their consciousness after death. Until this point, he believed that Jedi experienced death the same way as anyone else, but he did not anticipate hearing the voices of both of his former masters. While in this cavern, he hears Qui-Gon speak to him. First, he calls him by his former name, Anakin, before telling him that he had encountered a vergence in the Force. This seems to indicate a sort of ripple throughout the galaxy, though he doesn't state what exactly caused this vergence. Next, he recites his very own dying words. He is the chosen one. He will bring balance. What's interesting to note here is that Qui-Gon speaks in third person, not talking directly to Anakin or Vader, but instead addressing Anakin as a separate entity entirely. One interpretation of events is that Vader is simply hearing a memory, and he is hearing Qui-Gon Jinn's death through the Force in the past. This is supported in part by Obi-Wan's voice, which later enters the encounter and quotes saying that he already said at crucial points in his life. Obi-Wan states that Anakin has become the very thing he swore to destroy, just as he had done before dueling his Padawan on Mustafar, which seems to indicate that part of what the voices were saying were tied to things that they said in life. But since Qui-Gon also mentioned this vergence in the Force, he was likely present here with Darth Vader, speaking in real time alongside the projection of his voice that had been pulled from the past. By referring to him as somebody else, this might imply that Qui-Gon sees Vader as an unrecognizable husk and no longer regards the two of them as the same entities, Vader and Anakin, as different people. But at the same time, it shows that Qui-Gon did not lose hope and faith in Anakin entirely. But the last thing that Qui-Gon Jinn says to Anakin or Vader is perhaps the most important, when he says, "Dreams pass in time." And although just following this, Vader was thrust into active combat and was unable to process this in real time, it seems to speak volumes about how Anakin perceived both of these masters, and how they in turn viewed Anakin and Vader. Most importantly, however, it showcases that Qui-Gon had not lost faith in Anakin, and only believed that Vader was Anakin's next great challenge to overcome. But anyway, my friends and students of the Force, what did you think of these three encounters, and the only time that Qui-Gon Jinn's Force Ghost ever spoke to Vader? How do you feel about how Qui-Gon Jinn addressed Vader, and this important event in Vader's life? As always, my friends, thank you so much for watching, may the Force be with you, and have a great day.